Hello, hello. Welcome to Tuesday training, everybody. Oh, we got a full house today, and that makes me happy. Rob Diona in the house. I know you can't hear me yet because your audio is still getting connected. Hey, Wendy. Hey, Lori. Hey, Gary. Rob Diona. Nice to see you.
Morning,
Shantae. Anna's coming
afternoon, morning.
in. Gary's here. Hey, everybody. Oh, my heavens to Betsy. It's a full house, and I'm super happy. Is there anybody
So
else I did
Perry's
not say
back. Perry's back.
hi?
Yay. Rob's here. And you just went through all this, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm like, yay, everyone's here. I'm real
It's all
excited.
good. Stephanie, I'm glad you're here. Roma, Dr. Karen, I'm glad you're here as well. I know you guys aren't on camera, and that is totally okay. If you are in a place where you can't come on camera, come play with us. Hey, Kathy, same to you. And always feel free to use your mic. So come and play live if you want to. That's why you're here. I have to acknowledge we're not streaming into YouTube right now. I'm super sad. Thanks for waiting a couple of extra minutes in the waiting room today. Something is jiggered with my Zoom. I know Rob in group training last week, you were like, Gina, get it together. No, you were not. You were very cordial about it. But there is definitely something going on different with settings this week. So for those of you who are wanting the replay, I'll populate this into YouTube, but it won't be under the live section. So I'll just have to send you guys a note, which leads me to, I'm so glad those of you who are here live because you're catching it. You don't have to wait for a replay and for it to be populated in any crazy place. So welcome to Tuesday training. I'm happy to see so many familiar faces and some new faces in the house. If we've not met before, I am your host for the hour. I'm Gina Schatz. I am both a manual and movement practitioner, been running around that professional track for 31 years now, and I am hosting you for an hour of training. Today, we're talking about the IT band that was on special request. One of our Tuesday training regulars was like, could you cover this topic? I was like, yes, I can. So that is my intention for the hour, is to talk you through some anatomy, some functional anatomy, and also mostly, what do you do about that? Like, how do you apply that to the work that you do clinically? So I always teach anatomy that I know, and I teach anatomy results that I use. So if you're questioning, like, is there any validity to it? It works in my treatment setting, and so that's what I'm here to share with you. So that's what we're here to do every Tuesday at this time. For those of you who keep coming back, hey Cheryl, I'm so glad that you do. I love having you in the house. We have a full house today. You guys missed me last week. Is that what I'm noticing? You missed me last. I missed you too. I would have rather been here, but I was still talking anatomy. And in fact, today's topic, Dr. Karen, I'll tell you about today's topic. Dr. Karen says, hello from Canada, where I teach your own method of physical therapy and worked for decades. Cool beans. So we're common colleagues. I love this. We've all been at it for a while. I do know that folks who show up here on Tuesday training are clinically focused in creating results. I just tend to attract that type of caliber of practitioner, which delights me. So if you're new here and you're like, wow, I didn't know that existed, welcome. I'm glad that you're here because that's exactly what we're up to. Shantae says, I'm from Phoenix. Ooh, it's warm where you are. This is my first training and I'm glad to be here. Well, we're glad that you're here too. It's your first, but it might not be your last. If I play my cards right, you'll be coming back for more because we cover all kinds of good stuff each week. Hey, Rhonda, nice to see you. Today, as I mentioned, we're talking IT band. It was on special request. And last week, while I wasn't here, ironically, I was in a setting where I overheard someone talking about their knee issue. And I was like, oh, hey, I might want to interrupt this conversation and weigh in a little bit here. And sure enough, it created some results. And I was like, see, I'm still at Tuesday training. I'm not physically at Tuesday training, but emotionally, energetically, and spiritually, I was with you, solving problems in a treatment, in a medical setting. Let's just call it that. So we're wishing that chap luck with his knee because we know that he created some results based on what I'm going to share with you today. Isn't that exciting? So welcome everybody. Welcome back for another powwow hour. These hours always go fast. So let's just dive right in here. How many of you have already experienced yourself or with a client been exposed to anything IT band related? Show of hands. Yep, pretty common. Yep. And so what we're going to talk about, and how many of you feel like you resolved it, by the way? I know it's totally putting you on the spot. Feel like you resolved it, like about half of that number. Okay, good. Sometimes we get lucky and skilled. It's not just luck. Sometimes we get lucky. Sometimes we're skilled and we're like, I got it. And other times, this particular diagnosis tends to throw some practitioners. So if you have already resolved this readily in your own practice, great. I'd like to share some more intel, maybe a little detail here and there might zhuzh you a little bit. And if you've not resolved it yet and you want to, after today's training, I promise that you will. Rob says, I've been doing, whoops, hey, I gotta open up the chat now. I only have a little preview window. I gotta open up the chat to see it all. I've been doing a lot of work on IT bands and get everything from low back relief to neck releases. I would love more tips and tricks. Okay, cool. Yeah, most of the pain that we have in the body, we know this number, 80 to 90% of the musculoskeletal pain in the body is referred from somewhere else. So even when someone comes in with a very clear diagnosis, this is the part of the body that is the problem. What I want you to always, from here on out, if you haven't already, respond with in your head, not out loud, because that's rude. Sure it is. Like, I want that to be your response. Meaning, I want you to be curious about where else is it coming from? IT bands don't just spontaneously get pissed off. Muscles don't just arbitrarily stop functioning. There's a connection the way the body is designed. So there's a connection to where that design goes awry. So if we can practice that, okay, well, this is the spot of the body that's got all the attention and the confirmation in the report or in the imaging, but I know that there's somewhere else that's also related and most probably the source of this problem, then you're already more than 50% to solving it. Just adapting that line of thinking to start with will get you closer to the answer. It's super common to say, well, this client has this problem, I want to fix this problem, and then focus on the problem. Meaning they come with this chief complaint, that must be where I get to focus, and so I'm going to focus on the thing that's complaining. And it's just really not going to get you results 100% of the time, maybe 20% given the math. If 80 to 90% of the pain in the body is referred from somewhere else, if you focus on the chief complaint, you have the greatest chance of only resolving 20% of the problems. That's not good numbers. I know you guys are here to solve problems. So that's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for. That's what I like to do as well. Okay, so let's start with always here on Tuesday trainings and also as you're working clinically, what's the anatomy, right? We want to always take a diagnosis or a chief complaint, even if it hasn't been medically diagnosed from a Western lens. We always want to take a chief complaint and immediately go to, okay, what do I know about the anatomy? There's a couple reasons for that. One is because it'll salve your nervous system so you don't go into freak out. Oh, I don't really know what to do. Oh, freak out. Da-da-da-da. We don't really want to go there. We want to remain calm and grounded. We want our nervous system to be in a homeostatic, balanced place so that our wisdom, our knowledge, and our instincts can all pour through. They can't do that when you're running from a bear. So if you create a fight or flight situation on the inside of you, if that becomes your internal temperament, you won't get to the answer. or make it really hard for you to get there. Don't do that. Make it easy. So first things first is when you're faced with a chief complaint or a diagnosis. Oh, Wendy, I'm so glad that's working for you. Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate you. When you're faced with a chief complaint or with a diagnosis, deep breath, pause, and then what do I know about this anatomy? Now, here's a shortcut. Even if the answer to that question being, what do I know about this anatomy? Even if the answer is zip, I know nothing about this anatomy. The good news is there's books. The anatomy doesn't change. Iliotibial bands are the same on all beings. Well, dogs and humans. I don't know about cats, but the iliotibial bands, we're all working on humans, same across the board. You could look that up. You don't have to have it memorized. Isn't that such good news? You could just be like, hey, nervous system, I got you. No need to fret under my watch. I'm just going to figure this out. I'm going to look it up under a reference material. Yes, you are. So have a book with you, have an anatomy book with you. Worst case scenario, every once in a while I do this too, you can just pick up your cell phone and look it up under Google. Just Google the body part. Now, I will say this, you are more likely to get an accurate answer if you have a trusted resource in your possession. I happen to like this muscle book by Sig and Adams. I think they still sell it. They're like on edition number 6 right now. I'm on number 1. That's why my spine is duct taped. Pretty costly if you get into older editions. Lori, I think you looked it up recently. It's coming to mind kind of. Anyway, have a book that you trust. Not all muscle books are the same. Have a book that you trust that's easily referenceable, and have courage to use it even when a client is sitting there with you. Hey, Kathy, welcome. What I want you guys to really be okay with is to just pull out a reference book if you need to. If you need to know the anatomy, if you need to remember what muscle action, if you need to remember an attachment or a nerve innervation, I like all those answers to come to me from this book. And some of you have heard this story already. I checked it out with a client recently, probably about 9 months ago. She was an advanced movement practitioner on my table getting treated. And I had a blank. I couldn't think of something, or I didn't know the answer. I can't remember which. And while one hand was on her, I reached for this book with my other hand and I started thumbing through the pages because, hey, I have no shame. I'm going to look through this book, no problem. And then it caught myself and I was like, I teach this all the time, but I wonder if this is true. So, dear client of mine, in the middle of being treated, I'm literally one hand on instead of two hands on. I asked her, how does this feel to you being on the receiving end of coming to me for treatment and I'm looking up the answer in a reference book? And her answer without hesitation was, I'm grateful you know what page to look at because I know you're going to do something with it. So I promise you, your clients and patients and students are fine if you look up a reference book. You know how to spell the Latin to even look it up. Like they're okay with that for sure. So get a book, an anatomy book, keep it with you where you treat, and have full approval of yourself to go look up something. And you get to look up the anatomy if you don't already know it, because again, the answer that you're trying to get to, the solution you're trying to create, is in the anatomy. It's always in the anatomy. If you know your anatomy, you know your functional anatomy, you can solve a problem. All right, so what do we know then about the IT band? Turning it over to you guys. What do you guys know about the IT band? The author of the book is Siegen Adams, Gary. S-I-E-G, Siegen Adams. Probably should have given you guys a link. I don't have a link. I don't have any affiliation, but okay. What do we know about the IT band? Popcorn. Who has an answer? I start with TFL, Wendy. Great. So talk to us about TFL. So TFL and IT band. Imagine that you're telling somebody who's never heard of these two terms, or these two acronyms, actually. You're right, and say more. I know you're using the chat, which is cool. You probably type in as we speak. So what do we know about the IT band? What kind of structure is it? What kind of structure is the IT band, Rhonda? Rob says it's a tendon. It is a tendon. What do we know about tendons?
Non-contractile.
Non-contractile. Okay, great. What else do we know about tendons?
The end point of a muscle.
Yes, it's where muscles attach to bone. Exactly. Wendy says it is reinforcing band. Do you mean the TFL or do you mean the IT band, Wendy? What else do you know about tendons? Muscles attached to bone. They're non-contractile. IT band, Wendy, I see you. Gary, you guys don't have to raise your hands. You all who've been here 100 times, you just come on, talk to me, Gary.
I heard a data piece that in order to change the shape of the IT band, you have to put almost 2,000 pounds of pressure on it to make any change in the structure.
Yeah, tendons are not very changeable. Not only are they not contractile, like you mentioned, Perry, there's not blood flow in them like there is in muscle spindles. We don't really want them to change. So in order to change them, it would have to take impact trauma. Like you're saying, Gary, 2,000 pounds, right? We're not going to do that with a leg press. I don't know about you, but I'm not leg pressing 2,000 pounds. It's not happening. We wouldn't want to do that, right, Cheryl? Cheryl's looking at me like, why? You're not even suggesting that, are you? No, I'm not. Okay, so it takes a lot.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anna.
So this is the longest tendon in the body.
Yeah.
And it merges, I'm going to use the word merges, the glute max and my favorite muscle, and the TFL.
Okay, yeah. So rather than merging, it serves that muscle. So every
Serves.
muscle has two tendons, one on either side. 99, most of the muscles, okay, have a tendon on either side. Diaphragm obviously is not one of them. We're talking phasic muscles here, because the muscle attaches to bones with a tendon. So each muscle has a tendon on either side. This particular tendon serves two muscles on one end. It serves glute max, and it also serves, what other muscle does the IT band serve? What main muscle does the IT band serve? Wendy was talking to us about it in the chat.
TFL.
Yeah. Anybody remember what TFL stands for?
Tensor fascia lata.
Yeah, I love that word so much. All right, tensor fascia lata. So tensor fascia lata is the main muscle that the IT band serves. The IT band is a tendon. It's just like attaching that muscle to the bone, except that it's got all these special characteristics that go with it. It's super long. It has a relationship with another muscle. So it's kind of two timing, if you will. It also on its own right, hey, Lisa, welcome. It also on its own right does serve in the function of gait because of the muscle, the main muscle that it serves, which is tensor fascia lata. So here's where it gets a little blurry. Folks are like, wait, is it tensor fascia lata that you're talking about, or is it the IT band? Because I keep thinking it's the IT band. Here's what I want to share with you guys about the IT band out of the gate. It's a tendon. It's not going to contract. You're not going to change it with less than 2,000 pounds, and you shouldn't want to. It's a tendon. So as soon as you have a problem with a tendon, just like I offered at the beginning, well, what else is the problem here? Because even though all the chief complaint and the diagnosis is here on this body part, I know better than to focus there. If it's an IT band issue, whether it's diagnosis syndrome or not, I want you to go somewhere else. But don't go too far too fast. Just start with the muscle. Just start with the muscle that tendon serves, which is tensor fascia lata. That muscle did not get a whole lot of airtime when I went through massage therapy school the first time. Just doesn't get a whole lot of airtime. Why? Huge oversight, huge, which is what I'm going to illuminate for us today. And then you will no longer see IT band syndrome as an IT band issue if I do my job right here today, because it's really not. It's really just not the issue. And in the diagnosis of an IT band syndrome, it can be pretty compelling to then look at the tendon. Well, but Gina, the tendon has all this issue with it. The tendon is rubbing on the femur. The tendon has inflammation. The tendon. That's all true. In IT band syndrome, those are all characteristics of that diagnosis, for sure. You could go down that rabbit hole, no problem. You could Google that while your client is sitting there too. Just check out what that diagnosis includes. And I'm still appealing to you that tendon did not get into trouble by himself. Tendons don't just spontaneously get into issues. Musculoskeletal issues are always an orchestrated event. And we know that from the anatomy, because even muscles work in an orchestra. They don't work alone. So we know that musculoskeletal issues, 80 to 90% of the time, do not source from the chief complaint site. And there's always an orchestra at play. There's always more than one thing going on. We know this. So if you just go in to your troubleshooting with that knowledge and let it just land really confidently, you won't spin in the wrong directions for too long. It'll help you narrow down. And I've said this to practitioners before, and they're like, yeah, but that's a lot. You're telling me that there's a whole orchestra of things going on and I need to look in a couple places. That's a lot. It's actually easier though. You just follow how the anatomy connects rather than focusing on the IT band and getting nowhere, and focusing on the IT band and irritating it more, and focusing on the IT band and not getting rid of the sensation of pain and then freaking out that you don't know what you're doing. It's actually easier to follow the anatomy than to chase the symptom. So what's one thing that's pretty common for IT band issues? What do folks like to do? Maybe you've done it in the past. That's okay. You can confess and not tell anybody. It's fine. But what do we really like to do with the IT band issues?
Foam
Foam
roller.
roller.
Like,
rollers, yeah.
Right? In orchestra, we all said it. We foam
foam roll.
we foam roll it. And no, you don't want to foam roll a tendon. You don't want to foam roll a tendon. It doesn't have contractile tissues in it. You don't want to change it. It's not going to contract under the pressure of that foam roller. Perry, you got something to add?
Yeah, years ago I was doing a foam rolling class. And of course I've been a massage therapist a couple of years. And so the teacher was having us roll the IT band. I kind of told her afterward not to roll the IT band. You don't want that to stretch out. So I thought, work vastus lateralis, work the bicep femoris if you want to roll, but not directly on the IT band. So
And how was that received?
she was getting a little thinking about it, but
Yeah. So not all educators are the same, of course, and not all educators are clinical providers and all that. It's one of the reasons why I really encourage you guys to go with your anatomy, right? Go with your anatomy and still learn from other people. Like I'm an educator. I want you all to learn from me. I want to give you the shortcuts for sure. And if what we're doing when we're in a training environment is just taking notes to check boxes and we're not actually thinking about the boxes we're checking and the actions we're taking, then you might as well get replaced by a robot, right? And then we're not going to, because we need to use our strategic thinking. So use that. We need to use our strategic thinking and we need to let the anatomy speak for itself. Do that. Don't just go and follow someone else's technique and check a box, which might have been what that educator was doing, Perry. I don't know. I wasn't there, but it's common, right? So we're going to go back to our anatomy. And what do tendons respond to in the body? Tendons in general, what do tendons respond to in the body? We've said where they are and where they are. What do they respond to?
Force.
Yeah, they respond to torque and force.
Torque and force.
Yeah. So is there enough torque or force on a foam roller to exceed 2,000 pounds to affect the IT band anyway? No. So not only is it going to irritate it potentially, it's not even going to do what we want it to do. In fact, what a tendon does with too much torque before it's enough to disqualify the tension from that tendon, which in this case would have to be 2,000 pounds. Thanks for this math, Gary. I'm running to the finish line with this number. What a tendon will do with too much force that's not enough to take it out of the game is it'll respond with Golgi tendon organ response and it'll lock down harder. How's that for foam rolling not being effective to the IT band? Holy moly, you could make it worse. That's a no. So we know this just based on anatomy. We don't know this based on Gina said. We know this based on anatomy. We know what tendons respond to. We know what they do. And we know what a foam roller is. Even if you've never used one, you know what a foam roller is, right? So we know that that doesn't work. Okay, cool. So then we know what not to do. And I've already introduced us to the idea of follow the tendon to the muscle, right? You don't want to just try to change tendons because they're upset. A tendon is upset because he's holding down the fort. He's keeping that muscle on the bone. We don't want to tell him to stop doing that. Oh no, we don't. Oh no, that would be the wrong message. We do not want the tendon to say, hey, you just let go. Everybody just let go. You just disconnect and we'll sew you back up together later. We don't want that. So what we need to find out then is, how did that tendon get upset? If he's not the one contracting, the muscle is the one that's contracting. And I like this mantra a lot. The musculoskeletal pain that we experience is either stemmed from how we move or how we're not moving. The movement is coming from the muscle, not the tendon. So again, I've got all these, arrows pointing me towards, let's go to the muscle. Let's just nod when we hear IT band syndrome diagnosis, and let's just go to the muscle instead. You guys hear that? Following the trail, the breadcrumbs are leading you to the gingerbread house. Isn't this fun? So the first muscle to go to would be the muscle that tendon serves, which we've identified as tensor fasciae latae. Cool. What does tensor fasciae latae do in the body? What does this do? Now, if this is one of those times where you got to be like, I don't know, Gina, I don't actually get a whole lot of airtime on tensor fasciae latae. Yeah, me either. First massage therapy school, barely mentioned it. If they did, it wasn't part of the 20% that I remembered. It wasn't until the second time I went to Wendy says initiates flexion question mark. I love the question mark. Wendy is very honest. It wasn't until the second time I went back through massage therapy school that there was a little bit more focus on this muscle. And it was only after that focus that I went back clinically and was like, oh, this is how it actually plays out. Got it. So if I'm feeling a little time here, if you guys don't know the actual action of TFL, that's okay. Join the ranks with the rest of us. Didn't get a whole lot of airtime. And yet, if we know that IT band syndrome is so commonly diagnosed, it seems like an oversight for us to not have full grasp on tensor fasciae latae, doesn't it? Doesn't seem like a real warm invitation to just like fill in this gap? Yeah, for sure. All right, let's see the chat. Anna says medially rotates the hip and adducts the hip. Keeps legs in line, Wendy says. In line with what, Wendy? Say more. Anybody else? Tensor fasciae latae?
Good. It prevents the collapse of the knee when we're moving.
In what movement?
Gait, ambulation.
Yep. So knee flexion and knee extension with hip flexion and hip extension. Yep. When that chorus of joint actions is happening and you're weight bearing, tensor fasciae latae is responsible for the non-collapse of that column. The column meaning the leg, the extremity. Now this is where I get right into my zone of happy. Okay, so Murph is our assistant. For those of you who've not seen Murph, yes, he's missing a few parts, but he's a hard worker. Okay, Murph. Here's his femur. Here's his acetabulum, clearly his hip joint. Tensor fasciae latae lives right here. Lives right here. Sort of maybe 2 fingers-ish. This would be more like glute med. Okay, lives right here. Its tendon, tensor fasciae latae's tendon, starts just about here. So it's a tiny-ish muscle, huge, long tendon that goes all the way down the lateral side of the femur and then attaches below the knee. I would guess lateral flexion and adduction of the hip. You're back into action of TFL, Rob? Is that what you're on? Yep. Okay. So what we have here is everything that's happening in this joint here and everything that's happening in this joint here when they're moving together, being supported by the movement in this muscle and the tendon that connects it. Got it? You guys are looking thoughtful. Okay. So with the prevalence of IT band, quote, issues, what we're really looking at is the muscle movement and whether or not that muscle movement is done in alignment. Those of you who are at the Lever System Masterclass, you know that in order for a muscle to fully contract, the bones that it moves, always moves across a joint, muscles move bone. Every bone that is connected to the muscle's movement must be aligned with each other for that muscle to fully contract. It's straight up functional anatomy. We talked about it in the Lever System Masterclass. We talked about it in the Functional Anatomy Masterclass. These are all common topics I talk about over and over and over again. We must have internal structural alignment in order to have maximum capacity from a muscle. That's the base bottom equation. Okay, so if we know that this muscle is in trouble just from walking, that's not really what causes it, unless the concert of behavior that happens in gait is off in more than one place. Because muscles move bone, if the pattern of gait is off in more than one place, those muscles will contract and pull the bones out of place, for sure, because muscles move bone. We talked about that in repatterning a couple of weeks, I think it's 2 weeks ago. No, 2 weeks ago we did Venn diagram here in Tuesday training. There's a replay on our YouTube channel where we talked about repatterning. Okay. If gait is fine though, and these two bones, excuse me, the innominate and the femur, or the innominate and the sacrum, are not in alignment, then that means that the muscle connected to that bone, responsible for moving its adjacent bone, could get into trouble. It could get into trouble because the alignment is missing, making that muscle work harder to do the job. The job of TFL again is what?
To prevent the collapse, prevent the collapse of the knee in ambulation.
Exactly. So that means that it has a phasic action of the joint actions that you guys already called out. It also has an intrinsic action of stabilizing the column that supports the pelvis while it's in function, while it's moving. This little muscle, who we didn't get a whole lot of airtime on in school, has a big freaking job, which is why the IT band gets into trouble a lot, because of the muscle that it serves and what that muscle's responsibility is. Big, big, big responsibility. So again, phasic action is muscle action that you can see, which would be the joint action like abduction and medial rotation. TFL has synergistic qualities that do both of those joint actions. Its main job though, its main claim to fame is intrinsic, which is why we didn't learn about it in school, because intrinsic muscles are a huge piece of the missing puzzle that we've now solidified in the shots method, because it was missing and I was not getting results that I wanted. So got to go figure that out. TFL is one of those muscles. It holds these two bones, this ilium and this ilium. My hand isn't quite as wide as Murph's pelvis. It holds these two bones stable, with this joint stable, with this joint stable, while all of it's moving in gait and weight bearing. It's got a big job. Anna.
I thought one of the main jobs with glute med was to stabilize that hip joint.
Yeah, in its intrinsic action.
In its intrinsic action.
What's its phasic action?
So we're saying that the TFL carries out that job in a phasic movement, meaning an ambulation.
No. The stabilizing of the pelvis in both glute med and TFL are intrinsic actions.
Right.
The medial rotation and the abduction of the hip are phasic actions of the same muscles.
Exactly. So why does I know the TFL connects through to the IT band, and what Lori was saying is primary action is to keep both joints. Is that the difference? I'm trying to think of why does it overlap with the glute med? That's where I'm asking for the distinction. Is
okay. So we have the answer. Let's parse it out. So is the phasic action of TFL and glute med the same? Yep. And is its intrinsic action the same or similar? Yeah. What's the difference between its intrinsic action? What, Lori? You got it?
I think so. Isn't glute med, we talk about that for balance?
All intrinsic muscles
one-legged balance.
It's how you strengthen it. Is glute med stronger, Wendy asks. Well, not necessarily. That's a good guess, but there is a difference between them. What's the difference? So we're just on the anatomy, my friends, right? So just take your nervous system and be like, ooh, this is just factual information. You got this.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I just want to bring this up. Notice what your mirror neurons did. and it's normal, right? So if we know how we learn, then we can catch ourselves in our learning and then not have to freak out. And I think that's really helpful clinically. When you're working clinically and your mind starts to go fast, if you can catch what you're doing, you'll bring yourself back into the right place. I hear that a lot from practitioners, especially shots method practitioners. They're like, Gina, I freaked out. I thought too fast. And then I lost track of what I was, right. Just normal. And catch what's happening and bring yourself back. So right now, we're talking TFL to get us clarity off of the IT band and onto the TFL and point responsibility where it's due. And normal, Anna, your mirror neurons were like, wait, but I know this other thing that does that thing too. Normal. And that's also good because it's all connected. So that would have been another place to go for an IT band issue. What is happening in the stability of those innominants? There's a distinction though between how glute med stabilizes those innominants and how TFL is responsible in stabilizing those innominants. What's the difference? Anna, over to you. What's the difference between glute med stabilization and the stabilization that TFL provides?
I would say it doesn't cross two joints. Where at the TFL tendon, you know, it attaches down at the knee joint, and also, okay. So maybe crossing two joints is the wrong word again, but it helps in stabilizing the hip joint, but it also is really important in stabilizing the knee joint, whereas glute med works predominantly to stabilize the hip joint.
Perfect. So that's the distinction. So if someone comes with IT band issues, it's possible that glute med's in the mix because of the joint role that both glute med and TFL provide. But if someone comes with an IT band issue, I'm positive it's TFL. Right? And if I'm on TFL, now I'm into how they move, not just how they stand. And if I'm into movement, I'm into dynamic action, and it's a little bit more complex to solve. However, both static movement and dynamic movement require alignment. Require it. Okay. So if I have somebody with let me think about this for a second. What glute med chief complaint do you hear of, Anna? What's a common glute med complaint? You're muted.
Sorry. Standing on one leg. You know, the inability.
The inability to stand on one leg. Okay. And how many people stand on one leg?
Everyone.
What?
Yogis. Everyone, which is probably why we're in that world. But we all do for a minute, right?
When we're walking. When we're walking.
I know, down the rabbit hole. Here we go.
Wait.
Okay. No. Okay.
Yeah. Wendy says flamingos. That's freaking hilarious. So it's true that glute med issues would show up either in one-legged standing and the inability to do that, or some sort of discomfort after walking, because every other step is a one-legged stand, but it's a dynamic one-legged stand. Whereas TFL is always dynamic. It's stabilizing dynamically every time because that's its job. So there's a slight distinction. If I had an IT band person, what activities are they doing? If you're all the IT band people you've ever served, what do they do in their physical life?
They run, they cycle, they walk. Run.
Yeah, right. They do all of it. Simultaneous joint and hip, knee and hip joint action simultaneously a lot, right? And so then boom, it's IT band, right? So it's just a way to like split hairs a little bit, but find your way to what muscle do I need to address here? And we know that they all work in concert. So if you're stabilizing the pelvis to bring tensor fasciae latae to a place of peace, are you also positively impacting glute med? Yeah, hello, you sure are. Yeah, And I still need to know which one to do because they do slightly different things and they have slightly different fiber directions and I need to know how to address them. Right. And that gets into, well, then what do you do about it? So first notice that what do you do about it is found in what is it? Use your anatomy. Your anatomy will help you a lot in solving the problem. You don't have to get too petrified about a diagnosis. Just what is the diagnosis telling you about the anatomy? What's the adjoining anatomy? What's the concert of players that are all participating here? And what do I know about them all? And then what do I do about it? Right? What do you do about it gets really easy once you figure out what the components are. Okay. So what is the remedy for IT band syndrome? What's the remedy? It's laying right there on the platter, guys. It's right there on the platter. What's the remedy?
Make sure the bones are aligned and strengthen the muscle. Or go ahead.
Which bones aligned and strengthen which muscle? Wendy, you're saying contract and stretch what? Which bones are aligned? Which muscles? What can contract what? Stretch what?
Got it. So well, geez, we go back. Sacrum to innominate to femur. Femur affects the tibia, and down we go.
No, we don't go down further than that.
Don't go down further than the tibia.
No, no,
Because
because
it stops right there.
yeah. So what did we say was the cause? Let's answer it this way. What did we say was the cause of IT band syndrome? It's not the IT band. The IT band is not the cause of his own syndrome. What's the cause of it?
TFL.
What about TFL? What caused IT band syndrome?
So the TFL is either not contracting enough in the running, walking, or it is constantly contracted, more likely, and doesn't have any opportunity. You know, it could be it's just frozen in contraction and doesn't have an opportunity to lengthen.
And what's causing the muscle to respond in that way?
Misalignment of the
Yes.
skeleton.
Yes. Yeah,
Right.
because muscles don't just spontaneously get pissed off. Something causes that. Something causes that. Alignment causes a muscle to
But
not
it's
be
like,
able.
which came first, the chicken or the egg? Because then you've got the, it's like, oh my gosh, you've got the skeletal alignment off and the muscles are now locked down and it's like, I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, it's a totally fair question, Wendy. And it's one of the reasons why I did put that masterclass together, because the formula is alignment, strength, function. If you follow that, you will know which is the chicken and which is the egg. And sometimes you got to go alignment, strength, back to alignment, to strength, to function. But if you follow in that order, it'll help you like intercept that chicken and egg circle. It'll absolutely help you do that, because it can get overwhelming. You're like, I don't know, is it the muscles that move the bone or the bone that was out that caused the muscle? Blah, 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 blah. Both, and pick one.
Okay.
Both and pick one. Start and see what happens.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
Schatz method is sacrum centric. If the sacrum's out as the keystone of the body, nothing else can be aligned. If nothing else is aligned or can be aligned, then that means muscles can't contract fully. Muscles move bone. So if muscles aren't contracting fully, they're not moving the bones in place and they're not allowing the bones to go back into place. So what do? Pick on the muscle? No, I put the sacrum back in place so that all the muscles have a chance to contract equally. So it's sacrum centric, balanced lever system, check the pattern and the movement or the function. Alignment first, sacrum, strength, muscles, lever system. Are they working? Are they not working? If you go to attract a muscle that's not working and the bones he attaches to are out of alignment, you won't get him to contract fully. You'll spin. So alignment, then strength, then movement, function. And manual practitioners in the house, love you deeply. If you're not restoring the function after you've addressed those muscles that move the bone, you're going to leave them back into misalignment because those muscles don't know how to do the job anymore. They have an old pattern. They're going to walk their pretty faces back to the car and be right out of alignment before dinner that night. You've got to restore the function somehow. I'm not saying you need to become a personal trainer before your next client comes in. I'm saying you need to get that orchestra of muscles to do a job together now that they have a new aligned foundation and access to contract. They must do the function in a pattern together. Otherwise, the body's going to pick up the pattern it came in with, which was a compensatory pattern. So Wendy, does that support you? Like where do I start in the chicken and egg spiral?
For sure. Yeah. I find that interesting to start with the sacrum. So, you know, it makes me want to go there, but you know, that's another topic.
It is. That's all right.
Oh.
We did talk sacrum a couple weeks back. There's a replay that's actually.
Okay. I'll look on YouTube. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions coming up on this one? Y'all looking very thoughtful. You're either reviewing all your clients from the last 2 weeks, or you're still questioning something I've said. I can't quite read faces yet today. Anna, Lori, you're first. Unmute. Go ahead.
Now, it just always, like, when we walk through it like this, I'm like, oh, it's so easy. And then when I'm in the setting, I'm like, I did like Wendy, I'm like, is it here? Is it? And I know this. I'll just go back to what we know. Like, I bet, yeah, it just reminds me. I'm like, oh, of course we know this. And then when we're there, I'm like, do I know that? Right.
Yeah, no, it just takes practice. I just read somewhere, I wrote this down actually. I was like, ooh, I'm going to write a newsletter on this one. It makes so much sense. It was something like, yes, practice is what makes you a master, not your notebook. Right? So you could know it, and we could have taken notes on this, and you all graduated mastery, and I love you. And if you haven't practiced it yet, you're still synthesizing. Okay. But now that you synthesized, you got a whole slew of things to do with the sacrum because you got that from the method. Go solve it. And then the next time the IT band comes in, you're like, I can't be duped twice on the same topic. I know what to do here. And then by the time the third one comes in, you're not even thinking anymore. You don't even have, you're thinking, you have to strategically think your way through that problem solving, but you're not thinking about what does that muscle do again? You already got that. You already did the review. You already practiced it 2-3 times. Third time, charm.
Do you think the disconnect, because how many people have heard, I foam roll my IT band. Do you think the disconnect is they don't realize that it's a tendon? They think folks might think it's a muscle. Like where do
yeah, they don't know the anatomy. Yeah, which is where we started. What's the anatomy? What is that anatomy actually, right? Like it took us a minute to be like, oh yeah, it's a tendon. What does a tendon do again? Oh yeah, it does that. So if we need like a split second to catch up with ourselves, certainly people who are anatomists don't know. And this is going to sound like a slam for those of you who are sensitive. I just want to preface this. There's a lot of physical therapy that's not accurate. And they got that, I don't think it was personal trainers that came up with it first. I think it was PT that came up with it first. And I can't remember what client I had 2 clients last Friday. And I was like, oh my God, if I hear one more thing about a physical therapist, I'm going to roll my eyes. And one of them actually, after seeing me, this is not a boast, but it's just the truth. After seeing me twice and then going back to her physical therapist, realized, oh, it was at her physical therapy office where she felt worse afterward. So she actually let go of physical therapy. And now on session 3 with me, she's like, oh my God, I haven't been pain-free in over 9 months, Gina. I'm like, why do I keep hearing this 9-month thing? It's like they give birth and then come to me, The point is, I think it's in physical therapy, with due respect to that modality, because we do need them. I think because of how they're trained to look like this at one joint, they're not putting the whole thing together, right? So if someone has lateral knee pain, the IT band connects there, they're going to foam roll that baby and get it to stop because they know they need force on a tendon. They're not going to go up to the hips and connect it to TFL and then the sacrum. That's not how they're trained. That's how we work. Or if you're with me, that's how you work now, because that's how I work. And I taught you to do that, right? So I just think that maybe there's a lot more physical therapy that's been happening over the years than corrective body work, like what we do here. And you get more sessions with physical therapy typically because your insurance will cover it. So then you get rinse and repeat, and then it becomes knowledgeable. And then it doesn't really work, so you stop going, but you're desperate, so you'll do the thing that you were taught there. And I think it kind of like, if I had to follow the family tree on like how that happened, it just doesn't make anatomical sense though. So I wish we'd stop. I wish we'd stop. And also, that's how we create amazing results, and people are like, oh my gosh, the work you do is so great. Yes, it's thoughtful. Go ahead, Anna.
You know, I was going to share that it's so easy to buy into the client's chief complaint when they come in. And I've caught myself doing that because they're so adamant that that's where the problem is. And so to gain their trust, and I don't think my messaging is anywhere near where it needs to be, but to gain their trust that you got this and we're going to start somewhere other than where the pain is showing up is I'm finding that difficult.
Okay, well, so just move through the difficulty. You're welcome, Wendy. Move through the difficulty, Anna. Don't let it take you out, right? Like, if the way you gain their trust is by creating results. And
Well,
once
I'm sorry. I also am a firm supporter of here's the muscle chart. You show this, you educate your client, because their education has been all over the place. Like you said, I went to PT, they said this, but when you educate them and you show them the muscle and the tendon and how everything works together, and you can do that in 25 or 30 words or less, simplify it, the light bulb goes off in their heads. I've seen it happen over and over. It's like, oh, now I get it. It's like, you know, working with you today. Oh, now I get it. So I think it's really important to take out your charts and show clients that stuff, because they don't see all the connections. They just feel the problem.
Right. Shantae's agreeing with you, Gary. Yep, I agree with you. And sensations are different in someone's body. So again, like, go in with what you know. What someone is sensing in their body isn't always what's happening. Doesn't mean that we're making them wrong for their symptoms or experience. But we know this, SHOTS method practitioners, we've done this a million times. And if you're not in the SHOTS method, you've probably done something similar to this, where you have someone move in a particular way and they feel crooked, but now they're actually straight, right? They turn their toes forward, they feel like they're standing with their toes touching, because the sensory nervous system takes a minute to catch up with the new pattern, because motor skills move fast. Patterning starts at the brain, and it takes a minute for those two to catch up. Part of patterning, right? It's what we did in module 1 of the method. So we don't want to let their sensations dictate everything that's happening, and we don't want to make them wrong for it either. We need to meet them in the middle. So when you meet them in the middle, you could say things like stronger messaging, not stronger like strong arm and you need to listen to me, but stronger making a point, right? Turn your toes forward. How does that feel? Like I'm pigeon-toed. Look down. Are you? No. Huh. It's kind of a strong point, right? They're not wrong, but you're letting them know that like not all is how it seems. So I hear you, dear client. You have symptoms. What I know about symptoms is, and here's the math. So I'm going to find the solution for you at the source. I don't want to treat the symptoms. I want them to go away, but I don't want to treat the symptoms. After you've created that type of clarity, Anna, and then created the results that go with it, the next time your client comes in with a complaint, they'll be like, well, this is what hurts, but I know that you're going to find that it's somewhere else. I'm like, great. Thank you for the, freedom to do that, because that's exactly right. After you've created results, then they get it. If you haven't created results for them and your nervousness is letting you let them be the authority in the room, they know they're not in capable hands. And that's why they're getting more insistent. And we talked about authority in the method. So you get to step in there, my friend. You have something from Wendy. Wendy, you have something from Chuck? We love Chuck. Do you want to say more about that? That sounded like an incomplete sentence almost. All right, my friends, it is 12:58. Yes and no. You want to say something and you know you don't want to say something. Okay. It is 2 minutes until the end of our hour, which my goodness, that went by fast. I can
Sorry,
tell.
I couldn't type fast enough.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I did some learning from Chuck Duff's school, and no, I didn't need to say anything else.
Okay, great. Awesome. Speaking of training, I wanted to mention, which I didn't at the top of the hour, our Tuesday training this week is sponsored by the Shots Method Study Group, right? There is a study group happening right now, which is super awesome. Advocates and level 2 graduates are hosting the study group for any practitioner who is enrolled in Inspired Beyond Anatomy or Inspired Beyond Anatomy level 2. The study group now comes with those 2 courses for the time that we have the study group running, which is going to be for the next, I think, 6 weeks. The intention for the study group is to parse out these structural nuggets as you go, wherever we've laid the foundation for the Shots method in these foundational anatomy courses. Our graduates and level 2 graduates are there supporting all of the mining for gold, if you will. So if there was a time that you were looking for CEs and you're like, yeah, I could do an online class, but it would be more fun with friends. Yes, it would. And if you want to do this type of sleuthing with that type of anatomy, then now is the time, because again, that study group is going to be running for about another 6 weeks. Okay, so just wanted to make sure that we got our generous sponsor acknowledged while we're here for the hour of time. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys all again next Tuesday for another powerful hour. If you have any special requests, any diagnoses, any chief complaints, or anything like that that comes in for you in the next week that you would like me to cover next week, please do drop me a line. I will happily create a curriculum around that. In the meantime, thank you so much for being here, for contributing to such a rich and juicy conversation. And mostly thanks for the incredible work you're doing in the world. I'll see you guys next week. Bye for now.